Do you know what light trail photography is? Simply put, it's when an object or subject with a source of light moves across the frame and leaves a streak or trail of light. When photographed with a slower shutter speed, you get this result. For this video, we're going to use the nighttime traffic as our source, and we'll see what kind of shots we can get. I'm also going to teach you how to take these shots as well. So grab your camera and let's capture some moments. Now, in order to take these photos, there's a few things we need first. Number one, you need a tripod or a flat surface to put the camera on, because any type of movement with a slow shutter will cause blurriness in the photo. We're also going to be shooting on full manual mode because we want full control over the shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Lastly, I'm going to be using this remote shutter release. By pressing this button, this will trigger the shutter, and that way it avoids me touching the shutter button, causing vibration. If you don't have one of these, which they actually sell in a wireless model, this one only costs around $12. You can set your camera to timer mode. That way when you press the shutter button, the timer will kick in of either 2 or 5 seconds and then take the photo. That way there's no vibration when you're capturing the photo. So I am using the Nikon D5600. I do have my 18 to 140 lens. That's because I want to be able to control the focal lengths of either wide or zoomed in. Now, first thing is first, I need to get the focus lock. So what I want to do is either wait for a vehicle, or if you have a high-powered flashlight or something in the distance that's going to be bright enough for the camera to focus, you set it off in the distance, and then the focus will be locked just like that. Secondly, I want to make sure the ISO, which is the sensitivity of light to the sensor, is at the lowest. It's down to 100. Next, we're going to check the aperture. For that, this one goes down as low as 3.5, but will also go up all the way to 22. So we can play around with it depending on how long we want the shutter speed to be open for. I'm also going to be looking at the meter on here to see if the photo is going to be under or overexposed. So I'm going to be adjusting the shutter speed and aperture accordingly to get the proper exposure based on how bright the image is. Now, the way it's going to work is the slower the shutter speed, the more blur or streaks we're going to see. The faster the shutter speed, the shorter or less blur we're going to see. So we're going to get creative with different shutter speed lengths, and we'll see what we can actually capture. So right now it's showing I'm a little bit underexposed. That's because it's super dark. Now with traffic coming on, it's going to fluctuate the sensitivity and the meter to show if it is bright or not. So right now we're on a 10-second shutter, which to me is a bit long. I'm going to go down to 3 seconds, and we're going to try that once we get a grouping of cars coming through. Now, you can also get these same photos on your smartphone as well if you do have a pro or a manual mode. So same thing, you want to put your phone on a tripod or a flat surface, put it in pro or manual mode, and you want to adjust your shutter speed accordingly based on how much light there is and what kind of effect you want to get with the photos. Now, typically I want to have the ISO as low as possible, but sometimes you do have to raise it up. Right now I did raise it to 640, which is still fairly low within the ISO field. The reason I raised it up is because the background in the distance is so dark and dim that unless I go with a really long shutter speed, there's a good chance it may be underexposed. So we're going to experiment with this, see how the photo looks. If we have to, we'll either raise or lower the ISO and either shorten or increase the shutter speed. All right, so here's our first photo. Doesn't look like anything special, but it is kind of a baseline as to where we want to go. So I'm going to bring the ISO down to 400. I'm going to leave the aperture at f3.5, which is the lowest. Allows the most amount of light to come in. And we're still at a 3-second shutter speed. Okay, with that one there, we've got some oncoming traffic and a car trailing off. Looks a little bit better. I'm going to lower the ISO one more time. I'm going to put it down to 250. That tractor trailer made a nice light trail right there. You can also play around when you actually hit the shutter button. You can hit it just before the vehicle hits the frame. You can also hit it when it's partway through the frame, which will give you different effects as well. I'm going to go a little bit slower shutter speed. I'm going to go 4 seconds. Keep everything else the same here. That one's a pretty cool shot. We've got the truck coming head on towards us. Nice and bright lights streaking right towards the camera. This typically is a waiting game unless you're on a super busy road. This is the Pennsylvania Turnpike. This stretch of it is not super busy. We're going to wait for a grouping of cars going in both directions. All right, so that one we got trucks going in both directions. It actually looks awesome. That's probably my best shot so far. I'm going to experiment again. I'm actually going to bring the ISO all the way down because I want to get a super clean, crisp image with no distortion, no graininess, no noise. I'm going to increase the shutter speed to 5 seconds. That's going to be a fairly long shutter speed, and that's the duration that the shutter is going to be open on the camera. So again, I'm going to wait for a grouping of cars in either direction, and we'll keep it open for that length and see what the result is. All right, we do have a trail of cars approaching us. I'm going to hit the shutter button when they're a little bit closer. 1, 2, 3. All right, so big, bright, shiny light in the distance, streaking right towards the camera. Just want you to see what I'm contending with here. I am on a bridge. It's fairly busy tonight because of a road detour, so most of the traffic is coming this way. And I'm far enough off the bridge so there's no vibration. That's another thing you want to contend for, is that if you're on a structure like a bridge with vehicles or something moving over it, it can cause the bridge to move, which can cause the camera to move and distort your photo. All right, still at 5 seconds, 3.5 f-stop, ISO 100. We got cars trailing. It's capturing. All right, not too bad. A little bit dimmer closer to us, gets brighter farther away. Do you have an oncoming vehicle? I'm going to capture it close to us here. 3, 2, 1. That was an ideal shot. I hit the shutter just at the right time so you can see where the vehicle starts. The lights basically trailed just beneath me. And there's also traffic in the other direction. Can't ask for much of a better shot than that. I do want to point out, this is showing that the photo is going to be very underexposed. It's been like that nearly the entire time ever since I brought the ISO down to 100. As we've seen in the photos I've taken so far, they're coming out properly exposed. That's because the shutter is being opened long enough and there's enough light hitting the sensor that it's giving it proper exposure. No tractor trailers yet, but I do have a grouping of cars heading towards us. I'm going to capture this right now. 3, 2, 1. That one, I'm going to show you, I actually hit the shutter too early. The cars were going slower than anticipated, so they actually didn't come close enough by the time the shutter closed. So for me, that's not a very good photo. I do have a lone vehicle coming, and I'm going to wait a little bit longer. There we go. That one is really cool because the shutter closed just before the vehicle passed underneath us. You can actually see the exact spot where the shutter closed because the lights just stop abruptly. That's a really unique, creative shot. I'm now on the opposite side of the bridge, which will give us a different viewpoint and different composition as the vehicles are coming from a different direction and the background is slightly different as well. As an experiment, I'm going to increase the shutter speed to 6 seconds. I am zoomed in a little bit, so the f-stop is now at 4 and the ISO is still 100. We got a grouping of cars coming towards us. I'm going to wait for the proper composition, and we'll see what the results are going to be with that. Okay, that one looks fairly decent. We got the ambient light, which is lit up behind the trees, so you can see the tree line, and the vehicle's approaching. Try to recompose this just a little bit more. I do have a fence here, so I have to make sure I'm not catching that in the frame. But otherwise, okay. Vehicle passing underneath. I hit the shutter before it actually came out from under the bridge. And yes, that's a nice, great taillight streak. Now, if I did wait just a tiny bit longer, I could have got that streak going further, which we will try to capitalize on with another oncoming car. But right now, there's a good, large grouping of vehicles coming. This one should make for a good photo, especially if we have traffic in both directions. This may be, hopefully, fingers crossed, a fantastic photo. Second time was better. The tractor trailer had tons of lights on the trailer, and that gave a nice amber and white glow to it. I'm going to get a little bit more experimental here. I'm going to go to 10 seconds on the shutter speed. So the shutter is going to stay open for a total of 10 seconds. And that's going to be better for when there's a long, spread out distance of cars. It should be able to capture most of them coming through. I'm doing a kind of a crazy shot here. I have it at 20-second exposure right now. That's going to allow me to get the entire length of this road that's in front of the camera. And as long as there's cars coming that aren't overly bright, it should give a really creative shot. Now, if the lights are too bright, it could possibly overexpose the image. So it's going to be a trial and error shot, but once they get a decent grouping of cars, we'll see how it comes out, good or bad. So that's the final result. As you can see, allowed in a lot more light, so the background is much brighter. The headlights are much brighter. They can be adjusted accordingly with editing, but that is the raw image right there. Not perfect, but creative. I think I got a truck coming here. We're going to try to get it passing beneath us with the streak. There you have it. Another multicolored shot thanks to our hard-working truck drivers. So that is the tutorial on how to do light trails, a fun, creative way to do photography, whether you have a traditional camera like this or a smartphone. I recommend you get out and try it for yourself. Remember, a tripod or flat surface is necessary. You cannot do this handheld. You also would like to have a shutter release like this, whether it's wired or a remote one, wireless I should say. If not, use your timer either on your phone or your camera to avoid the vibration from pressing the shutter button. Lastly, experiment with different shutter speeds to get different creative shots, and you want to do it safely as well. Not an ideal situation here tonight, but I made do with what I had, and the light is providing enough luminance so people can see that I am here. Otherwise, I'd love to hear your feedback, and I just want to say more importantly that I'll see you behind the camera real soon. Thanks for watching.